What's that? Who there? Whoa.
There's a lot of reasons why this conversation, I'm super excited for, just to give people a sense of where solidcore is today. You guys have 71 studios across the country, all corporate owned. You've raised over $70 million across the life of the business. And you recently had VMG partners come in as a minority investor. And those are some big time numbers. So I'm pumped to, get in the time machine and go back to the beginning and kind of build up as we go and hear some of the stories that you've learned along the way. So I kind of want to start at the beginning and, when you wanted to make that transition, just talk us through that story. Like how'd you get exposed to the Pilates type workout? And when you started coming up with an initial concept for studio number one, what did that look like for you?
Yeah. So I'll take you back even a step further, because when I was running back on my feet, right, this was this thing I created. It had a whole lot of personal connection for me. It made a lot of pain in my life turn into a lot of good and helping people. And I get that question a lot of, why did you leave and how did you know it was time to leave? Because that's not an easy thing for founders to do. When you build something from scratch that didn't exist before off of an idea and emotion, it becomes a part of you. And for back on my feet, we were 6.5 years. I was 6.5 years into growing it. And I sort of had to sit back and listen to the voices that were starting to appear in my head of like, all right, Anne, like it's time for the next thing. You need to continue to push and challenge yourself. And I was like, what is that? Like, are you kidding me? Like this doesn't happen. Most people who start things, it doesn't work out. Here I am helping people every day who are living in homeless shelters have a better life. Like, no way. Like, I'm going to stick to this. And I had to really work on listening to why I was having those emotions and thoughts. And I started to pay attention because I'm not the best operator out there. I love to create and I love to build and I love to scale and I love to build community. And where Back on My Feet was, like, we had opened 12 chapters in 4.5 years in a nonprofit space. And I was like, I want to keep growing. I want to keep growing. But I had to be really honest about what the organization needed. And it needed to just grow vertically, meaning it needed to, further develop its program to better help people. And that just, one, wasn't as interesting to me. Two, not my skill set. And three, these voices didn't go away. So when I started doing Pilates, I was actually in California and I walked by a studio and I was like, oh, that looks very LA, like this workout. And you have to know that I was a massive worker outer, if that's even a word, running boot camps, everything there was. So, and I like was very proud of the fact that like, oh, I'm an athlete, like I'm in shape. So I see this LA studio and think it's going to be, fun. And I go take a class and I think I probably had the same reaction that you did, Kallaway, which was, oh my God, like, what was that? Why was that so difficult for me? And the next 2 days, I was so incredibly sore in all the areas that you try to tone and strengthen, but are just challenging to do through traditional workouts. And I started taking a Pilates workout back here in New York called SLT. And at some point I started to do the math on the business. And I'm like, this is an incredible business model. And I think I can do a different job. I don't want to say better. I can do a different job at building a community around this that would make more sense and be more authentic to me. So I was like, all right, this is what I'm doing. And I worked through the transition plan with Back on My Feet. And I moved back to DC because I felt like that would be an amazing market to open my first studio. I had spent some time there before and just felt the market was really ripe for boutique fitness. And I put pretty much all of my money, $175,000 that I had saved over the last several years of my life. And I was like, I'm going to bet on myself. Like I believe in this concept. I know how to build community. And I am all in. And it was scary, and as it should have been. But when it's as scary as that, like you don't even let yourself think about failure. I was like, this has to work. I don't have a plan B. I don't have an option B. Like, I'm going to make this work. And that kind of motivation was a real driver for me.
Yeah. When you're all in, it seems like the best things happen, right? Back against the wall, it has to work. I'm curious when you think about that first studio, right? So once you have like a few and you've got the model proven out and you have the playbook, you can rinse and repeat. it's not easy by any means, but it seems easier. But that first one, you're kind of going into it like you got to build the programming for the first time. You have to figure out how it's going to work with members coming in and out, but the equipment, et cetera. So talk through like from what your initial concept was to the like print and go model that you had with all the other studios. How different did that end up being? And like, what were some of the things that worked and didn't work in the early studio?
Yeah, really thoughtful question. And there's a lot that is true today that was true on that first day. And you have to remember that like I'm in the consumer facing business, right? So it's experiential. It's a branded experience built off of emotion. When people walk into the studio, they are met with a person. The product, of course, they're buying is the workout, but that's a service delivered by a human being. So much of it was, what is this experience going to be like? And you know, it's hard to know where some of this stuff comes from, but I'm huge into personal development. I've been reading for a long time, and you start to realize, and this, I learned this at Back on My Feet, was everybody's actually looking for the same thing, right? We want to be appreciated, valued, loved, celebrated, recognized, and seen. And a lot of times people forget that because we get in this rat race of life. And it's why Back on My Feet worked. We saw a bunch of people who were living in homeless shelters, and we learned about them. We took an interest in them. We put them in a positive environment and community and celebrated their achievements, and we didn't judge them. That's why they kept showing up and wanting to be there. And that is true with solidcore as well. So when people walk into that studio, the design of our model where the coach is the one who greets you, you think about boutique fitness, Kallaway, and there's a lot of sort of elevatedness to the instructor or the coach that almost seems like they're celebrity that you like think
on a
about
pedestal or something.
Yeah, they're literally on a pedestal. And it's no judgment against SoulCycle. They built a really incredible business, but that's never been my speed. Like I really believe in inclusivity. I believe in a very horizontal and flat organizational structure. I don't like when people act or feel or treat people like they're better than them. And so the brand and the community and the experience was really built off of that. And so one of the things that I learned through all my reading in my 20s was the most important word in any language to anybody is their own name. And so it was like, hey, at solidcore, people are going to hear their names a lot, and they need to hear their names in class. They need to be rewarded and congratulated for the things they're doing right, encouraging them to keep going so that you build this personal connection and that you feel seen in our business. And, we have a small group model. There's no more than 15. Some studios now have 20 people, but the coach is still responsible for learning the name of every client who's in their class and having that conversation with them. That's really important.
I love that. It seems so personal, right? Like some of these other fitness classes, it feels like a business in the sense that they're jam packing as many people as they can get in the square footage, and it's not the same. So that's really interesting. I love hearing those little like experiential tidbits.
Yeah.
When you go ahead.
And as I say, for people who are starting any kind of business, I think it's really important to ask yourself, what should you not skimp on? And at solidcore, we don't have a lot of we're not competing with we don't have showers, we don't have marble desks. There are certain things that we're like, that's not a real value add from an experience that we can see. But the value add is the people we hire, the sound system, right? Like we were like, we're not going to cheap our way out of the sound system and have the music sound like shit in here. And the mirrors and the lighting. If we can nail that, and people, the lighting looks good, people look good in the mirrors, they can see themselves, they're full length mirrors on both sides. All of that contributes to a positive experience, coupled by feeling like you're around a positive person who's encouraging you to push themselves in class. Like those were things that we just don't compromise on.